we're counting down 25 soups born from empty pantries, bare cupboards, and long winters with no end in sight. Number 13 was made from something most people throw directly in the trash today. Number 7 was prescribed by rural doctors as medicine before antibiotics existed. And number 1 fed more American families through hard winters than any other dish in history. From the 1880s through the Great Depression, these forgotten recipes kept families alive when nothing else could. Starting at the bottom with a bowl that was barely a meal at all. Number 15, water soup, marked the lowest ebb of winter kitchens, a bowl that was little more than warmth itself. In 1889, a mother in Madison County, Kentucky, wrote that they boiled a pot of water, added a broken loaf and a pinch of salt. The children called it soup, and it kept them until the next milking. That bare description reappeared decades later, in 1931, in a Chicago church pamphlet instructing relief workers to serve a bowl of hot water with a piece of stale bread. It described the dish as cheap, soothing, and in line with the dietary recommendations of the Relief Committee. This was not a side dish, but supper, a meal in name only, yet it brought a measure of comfort and unity to those gathered at the table. Water soup established the baseline. Nothing wasted, everyone fed, even when there was almost nothing left to give. Number 14, salt pork and potato soup brought a quiet richness to the winter table when all else was lean. A single strip of salt pork, bought for just 8 cents a pound, according to 1935 Farm Journal price tables, could be rendered to flavor a whole pot of potatoes. County extension pamphlets from the 1920s taught families how to cure and stretch this staple, turning a few cubes of meat and its fat into a meal that filled bellies and lifted spirits. The salt pork did more than add flavor. It supplied desperately needed calories, making the difference between mere survival and a sense of comfort. In kitchens where water soup set the lowest bar, even a trace of pork fat raised the meal, proving that thrift and a touch of animal fat could keep families going through the harshest months. Number 13, potato peel soup stands as a quiet testament to a world where nothing was wasted and every scrap was seen as a resource. In April of 1924, a Raleigh County, West Virginia journal recorded, "Yesterday we peeled the last of the potatoes. The peels were boiled with a dash of onion and a spoonful of lard, a thin soup that fed 4 mouths for a day." This was not a tale of desperation, but of routine, and it was endorsed again in 1933 in a housekeeping guide that listed potato peel broth as a regular supper, not an emergency fix. Peels that might have gone to the pigs or the compost became the main ingredient, simmered until their earthy flavor filled the kitchen. In these kitchens, turning what others discarded into a meal was simply the way things were done. The practice reveals a mindset where thrift was not a burden, but a form of wisdom, and where a pot of peel soup meant the difference between going hungry and getting through another winter night. Number 12, cabbage and salt pork pot brought a vital measure of green to the winter table when fresh produce was scarce and illness stalked the coldest months. In 1932, a New York State Extension bulletin recommended simmering a head of cabbage, sold for just 3 cents according to a 1933 market ad, with a 1/4 pound of salted pork. This simple pot did more than fill bellies. It supplied vitamin C when citrus was out of reach and scurvy was a real threat. The slow simmer softened the cabbage and drew out every ounce of flavor from the pork, stretching a small piece of meat across a family meal. For many, this was not a last resort, but a regular winter supper, shaped by thrift and the quiet calculation of what would keep children healthy until spring. The wisdom in that pot, balancing cost, nutrition, and survival, echoes the silent care that defined winter kitchens. Number 11, Tomato and rice soup brought a taste of summer into the depths of winter, thanks to the careful hands that lined cellar shelves with jars of home-canned tomatoes. In 1915, the USDA Canning Bulletin described an average household batch as 8 gallons, 32-quart jars, each one a promise of brightness when the fields were frozen. A single quart, diluted with the water and stretched with a handful of rice, could feed a family on a cold January night. Rice, at just 5 cents a pound in 1932, thickened the broth and made every spoonful go further. By the late 1920s, WPA Home Economics reports ranked tomato soup among the most common winter meals in poor households. The acidity cut through the monotony of root vegetables, while the act of opening a jar marked the success of summer's labor. In these kitchens, preservation was not just about survival. It was a quiet assertion that flavor and memory could be bottled and brought to the table, even when the garden was long asleep. Number 10. Dried pea soup anchored the weekly rhythm of winter kitchens, especially across the northern grain belt. In a 1930 issue of the Southern Homemaker, a Tennessee housewife described her method. Soak a cup of dried split peas overnight, then simmer them with diced carrot, onion, and a scrap of smoked ham or bacon rind. This pot, she wrote, cost just 3 cents per serving, a figure confirmed by price sheets from the era when a pound of peas could stretch across several meals. The result was a thick, buttery broth, deeply filling and rich in protein, that clung to the spoon and gave warmth long after supper ended. A smoky scrap, sometimes no more than a bone end or rind, transformed the flavor, proving that even the smallest piece of meat could lift a meal. Dried pea soup was not an act of desperation, but a planned rotation, a way to keep children strong when fresh food was scarce. In homes where soup was the entire meal, this dish stood as evidence of thrift and nutrition and the quiet skill of making something hearty from almost nothing. Number 9. Navy bean and ham hock soup stood as the backbone of countless church kitchens and settlement houses during the darkest winters of the Depression. In 1933, the Mission U.S. Relief Cookbook published a recipe titled Soup for the Penniless, calling for just 2 cups of navy beans and a single ham hock simmered in 2 quarts of water with a pinch of pepper. This humble combination, mashed lightly to increase bulk, could stretch to feed dozens in a day. It proved that protein and warmth could be scaled for the many, not just the household. Church and settlement records from Knoxville to rural Tennessee document pots large enough to serve entire congregations, each bowl a lifeline in a season of scarcity. Unlike the home kitchen's smaller scale, these institutional soups became a social safety net, offering sustenance to the hungry and dignity to those who lined up in the cold. Relief cookbooks and charity pamphlets of the era show how thrift, when multiplied, became community care, each ladleful a testament to the ingenuity and compassion that kept families alive when options were few and hope was measured in spoonfuls. 8th place, chicken feet broth simmered at the heart of winter kitchens, where thrift met hope. In March 1927, a column from the Appalachian News described a mother's practice: boiling 1 pound of chicken feet with onions and a bay leaf, then straining the liquid and adding barley. The result was a broth so rich in gelatin it set to a trembling jelly when cooled, a texture that families prized as both food and medicine. Oral histories from Kentucky and Tennessee recall this broth as a remedy for pneumonia, with rural doctors quietly recommending it long before modern science explained why. The belief ran deep. A bowl of this shimmering stock could warm a body from the inside out, and in the hardest months, a single pot stretched across days. Chicken feet, so often discarded, became a source of strength and comfort, their transformation a testament to the quiet ingenuity that defined survival. In these kitchens, nourishment was measured not just in calories, but in the faith that care and resourcefulness could heal. Number 7. beef bone and vegetable soup stood as the caretaker's pot in winter kitchens, simmered low and long for those in need of strength. In farmhouse scrapbooks and penciled recipe margins, the first bowls were often set aside for a convalescing child or a grandfather too frail to work the fields. The ritual began with a marrow bone, sometimes saved from a Sunday roast, sometimes begged from the butcher, and a handful of root vegetables drawn from the cellar. Carrots, parsnips, turnips, whatever was left. Water, poured over the bones, was left to simmer from dawn until the house grew warm with the scent of broth. The pot was never hurried. Every hour teased out more nourishment, and each evening the soup was reheated, its flavor deepening as the days wore on. Notes in home economics columns and old ledger books describe this soup as the one that brings back the sick, a gentle meal for those who needed care above all else. In these kitchens, beef bone and vegetable soup was more than sustenance. It was a quiet act of devotion, proof that even in the leanest years, families found a way to offer comfort and healing from the simplest scraps. Number 6. Cornbread and pot liquor brought a measure of Southern humor and thrift to the winter table. In 1915, an Oklahoma homesteader's memoir records a mother writing that the pot liquor we made from yesterday's cornbread, boiled in the bean water, was our breakfast for 3 days, and the children called it mush. That simple phrase captures a whole tradition. The liquid left after simmering beans or greens, never discarded, was poured over crumbled cornbread to make a sustaining meal. Stretching the last bit of flavor from the pot was not just frugality. It was a kind of quiet ingenuity that kept families going through lean stretches. In 1931, Senator Huey Long famously turned the nation's attention to this very dish, sparking a spirited debate in the newspapers over whether pot liquor should be sipped from a cup or eaten with a fork. For families who lived this reality, the answer was simple: you used whatever you had. Pot liquor and cornbread was more than breakfast or supper. It was proof that nothing on the table went to waste, and that even the humblest meal could carry a family through another hard winter morning. In 5th place, pumpkin and cornmeal soup brought a rare sense of celebration to the winter table, standing out as a dish children remembered long after the hard years had passed. When the cellar shelves grew bare, a single pumpkin, stored on saplings in the cool dark for 4 or 5 months, became a beacon of color and sweetness. Oral histories from the Midwest recall the excitement of slicing open the last pumpkin in January, the orange flesh promising a meal that tasted almost like a holiday. Mothers would simmer cubes of pumpkin with a handful of cornmeal, stirring until the broth thickened to a gentle porridge, sometimes sweetened with a pinch of brown sugar, or spiced with cinnamon if any was left from autumn. The soup's aroma filled the house, offering a moment of warmth and hope in the bleakest weeks. For many, this was more than food. It was a memory of care, a reminder that even in scarcity, something special could be coaxed from the cellar. The tender balance of sweet and savory, the bright color in a gray season, and the memory of family gathered close made pumpkin and cornmeal soup a cherished exception in the long winter routine. In 4th place, sourdough dumpling soup stands as a living thread through generations of winter kitchens. In the corner of a farmhouse, a crock of starter, sometimes handed down from mother to daughter across decades, waited quietly for its call. There are recipe cards from the 1930s, edges browned and handwriting faded, that read simply, "Drop a spoonful of sourdough into boiling broth. Cook until puffed." The method was never measured, only learned by watching, pinch, drop, and wait for the dumpling to rise. An Iowa County Extension bulletin from 1934 describes how a single starter could feed a family of 5 for a week, stretching flour and water into sustenance when cupboards were bare. The sour tang of the dumplings flavored the broth, but more than that, it marked the continuity of care, an inheritance kept alive not in books, but in the daily act of feeding. Each bowl carried the memory of hands that kept the starter alive through lean years, proving that a simple living culture could nourish both body and tradition, even in the coldest season. In the third place, ham bone soup stands as the quiet treasure of winter kitchens. A single bone, boiled and reboiled, feeding a family for days and a community for even longer. In the winter of 1931, the Harrisburg Daily carried a story of the Red Cross preparing an enormous kettle, one ham bone, a handful of carrots and potatoes, a pinch of thyme, simmered for 12 hours, and ladled out to over 200 families during a week when coal was scarce. The power of this soup lay in its endurance. A single bone, often given free by the butcher, could stretch across 3 days of meals at home, each reheating drawing out more richness and more nourishment. Oral recollections from the era describe mothers scraping the last bit of marrow, children waiting for the pot to bubble, and the unmistakable aroma that filled the house, promising another meal when hope was thin. This was more than thrift. It was a kind of alchemy, turning what others discarded into sustenance and warmth. The practice shaped a small economy of bone reuse, where nothing was wasted and every scrap was honored. Today, when bones are packaged and sold as luxury broth, the memory of ham bone soup reminds us of a time when survival depended on extracting every possible ounce of care from what little remained. In second place, chicken and vegetable soup served as the gentle hand of the caretaker in homes where winter illness threatened to unravel hard-won stability. Across Works Progress Administration oral histories and family transcripts from the 1930s, this soup is remembered not for its abundance, but for its intent. A strained broth, clear and mild, ladled by a mother or grandmother for a child recovering from fever. The ritual was nearly universal. A tough laying hen simmered with carrots, onions, and whatever root vegetables could be spared, cooked until the meat fell from the bone and the broth turned golden. The first bowl always went to the sick, often with a soft slice of bread or a spoonful of rice to ease digestion. People interviewed by the Works Progress Administration recalled the comfort of hearing the ladle against the pot, the warmth of broth on a sore throat, and the silent promise that someone cared enough to coax nourishment from scraps. In these kitchens, soup was more than food. It was the first act of healing, a quiet testament to love and endurance. The memory of this caretaker's soup, passed down in stories and faded recipe cards, prepares the way for the communal ethic of stone soup, where the act of feeding becomes an act of hope. And finally, in first place, stone soup stands as the living heart of the winter kitchen, not for what went into the pot, but for what it drew out of a community. The story, first printed in a 1934 Appalachian folklore pamphlet, told of villagers each bringing a scrap, a carrot end, a sliver of bacon, a handful of beans, to a pot that began with nothing but water and a stone. The tale traveled fast during the Depression, inspiring relief kitchens and church basements to host their own add-a-scrap gatherings. In these moments, the soup was not just food. It was a lesson in survival by sharing, a quiet rebellion against isolation and hunger. Soup kitchen history pages record how the legend shaped real practice. A pot on the boil, a line of neighbors, each one offering what little they could spare. No set recipe, no single cook, just the belief that together even scraps could become a feast. Stone soup was never about the stone, or even the soup. It was about turning scarcity into abundance through trust, generosity, and hope. As the old women said, it was the meal that fed everyone, not just with calories, but with the knowledge that no one had to face the winter alone. Today, the memory of stone soup is a reminder that every scrap, every story, every name for these humble pots is worth preserving, if only to remember how families once kept each other alive by refusing to let anyone go hungry. Across all 25 soups, one pattern endures. Nothing was wasted, and everyone was fed. These were not side dishes. They were family lifelines, crafted from wisdom passed quietly from mother to daughter, winter after winter. What survives isn't just a recipe, but a tradition of dignity and care, nearly vanished now. Every remembered soup name is a story worth saving. Which of these stories lived in your family? Share your memories below.